This is how I see it, and I have been coming across some very important collapse information. I don't nearly do enough of these videos, which I think is very important. So if you aren't finding them here, I really highly recommend you seek them out and keep up on this. There are just so many things I can do in a day. At any rate, let's take a listen.
Well, one of the things that needs to be hit on here, Bix, and you know as well as I do, that the propaganda that's constantly rolled out as it pertains to derivatives is that, quote unquote, derivatives is a zero-sum game. At the end of every derivatives contract is a winner and a loser, and at the end of the day it's a wash. That's completely not true. As Bill Holter has said to us, when the losers can't pay the winners are losers too. And I think the panic we're seeing globally here as it pertains to the Deutsche Bank situation, with 55 to 85 trillion dollars in derivatives exposure, there's going to be a lot of winners that aren't going to get paid, Bix, and that will be the cascading ripple effect that ultimately leads to total collapse.
So, Deutsche Bank stock crashes to record low. This was a few days ago on the 9th. Today's the 13th of February. This is lower than the Lehman crash. Do you remember the Lehman crash? Launched off the 2008 collapse. So this is worse than that. I hope that sinks in. I hope that's clear on what is taking place here. Deutsche Bank on the verge of taking down the entire global monetary system. This is an article by Andrew Hoffman, who is often on the SGT report, and he writes, in Deutsche Bank's case, it's $165 billion of debt compared to roughly 140 for Lehman before it collapsed, is dramatically understated due to its $50+ trillion of gross national derivatives exposure, let alone its massive exposure to the pigs, France, and the rest of the collapsing European Union. Honestly, no one knows exactly how much Enron-like off-balance sheet liabilities DB has. That's Deutsche Bank. However, like Enron, Lehman, Fannie Mae, and all of the previous frauds before it, financial markets couldn't be more onto it. In other words, just as was the case with early 2000s Ponzi schemes like Enron and WorldCom, and 2008's Lehman, Fannie Mae, AIG, Bear Stearns, and others, Deutsche Bank stocks, bonds, and credit default swaps are screaming imminent bankruptcy. In 2008, of course, it was screaming the same thing, but was deemed too big to fail and promptly bailed out. This time around, no such salvation awaits for Deutsche Bank, Alpha Bank, or hundreds, if not thousands, of insolvent banks worldwide, as neither the will nor the funds to bail them out exists, unless, of course, central banks hyperinflate or governments bail in which, in either case, World War III will nearly certainly follow, plus civil wars, military coups, and other draconian social and government responses. This collapse is coming, and even if the government did bail in these banks again, all they're doing is setting themselves up and us for an even worse collapse in the future. This collapse we're talking about, unfortunately, should have happened in 2008. We'd be much better off right now if they had just not bailed out those banks and let it happen. It's just something that has to happen. Deutsche Bank CEO Joseph Ackerman recently described the EU's precarious position. Many European banks would not survive having to revalue sovereign debt held on the banking book at market levels, i.e., many European banks are holding debt instruments issued by Greece and other sovereigns as assets. Banks use those sovereign debt instruments as collateral to justify issuing additional loans. Under fractional reserve banking, a bank can issue loans worth 10 times or more the face value of their collateral, i.e., if a bank were holding $100 billion in Greek debt instruments, that bank might theoretically issue an additional $1 trillion in additional loans to other borrowers. And this is our huge problem. The fractional reserve banking is our problem.
Hey friends, I have a very dynamic in-the-moment update with Bix Weir from Road to Ruta ready for you. And boy, we're watching collapse happen in real time. Bix, as you know, we've been documenting the collapse. I've been doing it with Bill Holter, Rob Kirby, Andy Hoffman, yourself. So many others know what's going on, including Peter Schiff, Jim Rogers. The collapse is happening. How are you, Bix?
I'm good. It's amazing that it's taken so long, but it really is kicking into high gear now.
Yeah, it's happening in earnest. And Bix, as you know, there's pension fund managers all over this country that would kill for a 10, 11, or 12% return over the course of an entire year. And just this year alone, we've seen gold up 12% and silver is up 11%. And I don't think we've seen the end of it based on derivatives melting down $55 trillion in derivatives exposure at Deutsche Bank. And according to Bill Holter, I just spoke with him yesterday, called him up just to get his opinion on it. He says Deutsche Bank's real derivatives position is closer to $75 trillion.
Derivatives. A derivative is a security with a price that is dependent upon or derived from one or more underlying assets. The derivative itself is a contract between two or more parties based upon the asset or assets. Its value is determined by fluctuations in the underlying asset. The most common underlying assets include stocks, bonds, commodities, currencies, interest rates, and market indexes. Commodities are oil, silver, gold, things like that. This is a good little, very simplified video showing you, telling you exactly what derivatives are. A lot of this stuff is very easily goes over our heads. I am doing my best on this, but I understand that feeling.
The COMEX situation, since this conversation took place, the COMEX situation has only gotten worse, far worse.
And it's the unspoken, ridiculous, obvious thing about the whole system is that the COMEX cannot deliver on their promises, and they never will be able to. And as long as the system keeps going, what they'll do is they'll change the rules. We see that all the time. Take Kyle Bass's what he did with gold and translate that over to silver. What?
All right, all right, we're going to talk about the COMEX here a little bit. The COMEX is a primary market for trading metals such as gold, silver, copper, and aluminum, formerly known as the Commodity Exchange Incorporated. I'm going to link to everything. You can read these more in depth here. Okay, there are now 293 ounces of paper gold for every 1 ounce of physical as COMEX registered gold hits new low. So this is just another fractional reserve banking format being used on precious metals where they are selling more gold than they actually have. And this is obviously a huge problem for collapse. This is what COMEX has registered way down here, and this is what they have sold. So if all these people want their gold, well, forget it. Too bad for you. Collapse launches. So I want to read this from Zero Hedge. Huge Bank is scared. What needs to be done? In its own words, recognize the problem. It is not oil. It is not in the banks. It is a run on central bank liquidity, especially dollar-based, and there needs to be much more money liquidity. Draghi showed follow-up with a 1-2 punch, not to get rates down, but open the refi spigot to banks and ease liquidity concerns. All right, this is where I want to read down here. On negative rates, instead of making them punitive on the banks, allow the banks to earn the spread, make them punitive to savers. Cash should be charged interest. Put a microchip in large denomination notes, tax cash withdrawals. Encourage spending, not saving. Mortgage rates can be negative and banks can still earn a spread. The spread is the problem, not the rate. Right. Like they said, they featured this on the SGT report. These people are lunatics, and they are everywhere. This is of interest too. Wells Fargo training bank tellers for banking emergency scenario where they will be letting in 3 people at a time, locking their doors. The woman saying this said they're not calling it a banking holiday, just calling it an emergency scenario, but this is what they're getting to. And I don't know if there's actual confirmation that this has taken place, but I would absolutely believe that it is real. As you know, they're also trying to usher in a cashless society. RFID chips and totalitarian world government. I want to make the same point Bix Weir said, and that is that what do you get when you add a bail-in with a cashless society? And a bail-in is when the banks close up, the collapse has happened, and a percentage of all your money in the bank disappears overnight to bail them in. Well, you get theft. That's what you get. Bail-ins plus cashless society equals theft. You are absolutely out of control of your money. If you can't carry cash around in society anymore, if there's no such thing as money you can put in your pocket, even though it isn't even real money at this time, you are at their absolute mercy, begging on your knees for your money, for your hard-earned money. And that is one of the scariest things. Can anybody see where this is going? Seriously? No cash, all your money's in a bank that can just take it whenever they need it, if anything were to happen to them. And they are the cause of all of this mayhem. And you, as with everything else, are the ones that have to pay for it. So there was one more thing here about the COMEX I wanted to play. I'm just going to go jump in here and get it.
Exchanges, both the COMEX and the LBMA. That I've been talking about that for years. These corrupt exchanges that are self-regulating are ridiculous. There's an Asian silver exchange that's supposed to start up in April, which I'm excited about. Not that it's going to be any more upfront than the ones that are currently going, but it'll give people a different option. And I think a lot of the silver players, the big silver players, are kind of ready for the transition from an electronic derivative type market, which is the silver market right now, which trades over 300 billion ounces a year, to a physical market. No futures, options, and contracts, no silver derivatives, no swaptions, none of the garbage that we see today that is used to rig the price will be available after the system crashes and after the derivative market crashes. They're going to start up a new exchange where you have cash and you pay for your silver, physical silver, in cash only. I believe everything else will be outlawed once people lose all their life savings. They're going to be real pissed off at these derivative players. So we're entering into a really exciting time for silver.
So basically, banks have been buying gold and silver for a long time now, a lot of it. If that doesn't raise a red flag for you and light a fire under your ass to get some precious metals in your possession, not on paper, in your possession, actual metal in your hand, I don't know what is going to light that fire. Please do your own research about all this, but these are not the only people talking about a coming collapse. Thanks for being here.